This is Mel Pine with another episode of the From the Pure Land podcast. You may have heard a new bit of introductory music today. Let me know if you like it. I thought it was time for a little variety. My guest today is Bodhipakṣa, and he came to my attention years ago for his work with fake Buddha quotes and true Buddha quotes, the websites. And as I was in my early blogging days, like 15 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, it was a big help to me. I've kind of learned on my own now how to my antennae go up. I can spot a fake quote pretty easily, but it was a huge help to me in the beginning, and so I started giving them some small amount out of appreciation monthly via Patreon, and I've stayed aware of them, kept checking on Buddha quotes every time, and appreciating his work, and his book on fake Buddha quotes. And then he sent me an invitation to join his Wild Mind community. And from that, I learned more about him and Triratna and began meditating with their little group every morning. And I find a great comfort level with his teaching level and what I know of Triratna. So I asked him to join us. He's also got a new book out. The official bio, or semi-official bio, he's Scottish born. Author, meditation teacher, Buddhist teacher, author, meditation instructor, based in New Hampshire, practicing Buddhism since '82, teaching meditation since '80s. His new book, which I've just recently downloaded and which recently came out, is The Heart's Awakening, 108 steps, of course, 108 steps to a life of love. And he's got a long list of books out there. Wild Mind, a step-by-step guide to meditation, Living as a River, Vegetarianism, a Buddhist View, and of course, I can't believe it's not Buddha. And a really great title and theme, the difficult thing of being human. So, Bodhi, why don't you say hello and anything I have failed to accurately portray, or anything more you want to say about yourself?
Well, hello, Mel. It's nice to be here. The summary that you gave was very accurate. I did have an interest in Buddhism before 1982. That's when I started going along regularly to the Glasgow Buddhist Centre. I got interested in Buddhism when I was in high school, actually. So that was probably around about 1977. And I read a couple of books about Buddhism. I didn't get a huge amount out of them, I have to say. They weren't written very well. There weren't many books about Buddhism, actually, back in 1977, 1978. Our local library had one, I think it was called Teach Yourself Zen Buddhism. So it wasn't even about Buddhism as a whole, but it was specifically about Zen Buddhism, which I think is probably a more difficult entry point in some ways. And the book was written by Christmas Humphreys, who was the president. You may never have heard of him, but he was very big in British Buddhism early on. He was the president of the Buddhist Society, which was what was like it sounds, really. It was a society of people who were interested in Buddhism. They didn't necessarily consider themselves to be Buddhists, and I don't think he ever quite considered himself to be a Buddhist. Maybe he did, but he didn't write in a way that gave me a sense of what it would be like to actually live a Buddhist life, which is what I was looking for. I was not happy, and I was looking for a sense of meaning and structure, and I was really interested in meditation. I was very interested in learning how to meditate. If I remember correctly, he said that Westerners probably shouldn't meditate for more than a couple of minutes because our minds just can't handle it. So this is very old school stuff and not particularly helpful.
We inherited the non-meditative genes.
Yeah, something like that. So I went to university in 1979 in Glasgow, and I went along to what was to become the Glasgow Buddhist Centre, and went to a couple of meditation classes. Unfortunately, I was in a car accident after 2 weeks of attendance there, and then I had a broken leg, and it wasn't so easy to get around. And also, I discovered that university was quite hard. I'd managed to get through high school without too much difficulty, but I really had to work very, very hard at university. So it was a few years before I could go back there. It was not until I got an apartment in Glasgow and I was staying there over the summer that I had the leisure to go back. And then I started getting actually involved in the Sangha there. So so it goes a little bit further back than 1982, but essentially that is the point at which I went back and started to really regard myself as being a Buddhist as opposed to someone who just had an interest in Buddhism.
What was your early when did you grow up with a religion? Did you have a religion of origin, a familial religion that you grew out
Well,
of?
yes and no. When I was very young, my parents took me along to church, the Church of Scotland, which is a Presbyterian church. But they weren't believers themselves. They just thought it was a good thing to do. Um, uh, Religion had actually been quite a destructive force in both my mother's and my father's families in various ways. My great grandmother, that's my mother's mother's mother, had been a very strict Episcopalian, and when her daughter was widowed after having one child, as a very young woman, and decided to remarry, she said, "Well, you can remarry if you want, but you'll no longer be my daughter." And so uh, she just broke off relationships. I believe they had one very brief conversation after that when they met on the street, and it boiled down to "You're not my daughter," and that was it. Just walked away. And then there was my mother's sister married a Catholic. My dad's sister married a Catholic. Some of my dad's family were involved in a very strict, kind of like born again kind of church. This was in Dundee in Scotland, and they were very disapproving of anyone who wasn't part of their particular very small sect. So both my mother and my father were very suspicious of religion, but they still had enough. They still had that kind of lingering sense that it was a good thing, at least, to give children some exposure to it and to give them a choice. So after a few years of going to Sunday school, it probably wasn't many years. It was probably like 2 years or something. They said, you don't have to go if you don't want to. And I think out of duty, I may have gone along for like one more week and then realized it was actually much more fun on Sunday mornings to stay at home with my parents and crawl into bed with my mum, and we would read the comics and the newspapers together.
And then what was it later on that was missing that led you to Buddhism?
Well, I decided around about the age of 11 or so, maybe 12, that I didn't believe in God. We had quite spirited debates at the age of 12 about religion, and the notion of a creator God just didn't make any sense to me. So I'd been an atheist since then. And then when I was at high school, I was unhappy for various reasons. And there was a particular crisis where a lot of my friends moved away at the same time, and my friendship circle just disintegrated. And I think I just felt quite isolated, lonely, insecure, and I was looking for two things. One was something that would, I guess, give a sense of meaning, structure to life, a kind of philosophy of some sort. And I went back and started reading more about religion again. I remember reading the New Testament and being very impressed by some of the teachings of Jesus, although I wasn't very impressed by many of the Christians that I knew. Some of my fellow students were Christians, and they were quite, intolerant and denying the reality of evolution and things like this. That just didn't mesh with me at all. I tried reading the Quran, which I really didn't get much out of at all. I did a little bit of exploration of left-wing politics as well. I thought, maybe I'll become a communist or something like that, and that was kind of interesting, but I didn't really get deeply into that at all. I kept coming across references to Buddhism, and I liked what I heard. I liked hearing that Buddhism was a non-theistic religion, because I didn't even know that was possible. So the idea that there was a religious tradition out there that didn't have a creator God, that didn't need you to deny evolution or to say that the world was created in 4004 BC or whatever, that was attractive. And the other thing I was looking for was something to help me deal with my unhappiness. And Buddhism taught meditation. I didn't know anything about meditation or what it was, but I knew that Buddhism had meditation techniques, to use that word, and that this was a way of finding happiness inside of yourself rather than looking to the external world for happiness. Because my experience of the outside world was that it wasn't particularly conducive to happiness, with all my friends having disappeared, and me being left with a lot of people that I just didn't really connect with, or it was even more than just not connecting with them. They were the people that I didn't really like that much, and who maybe didn't really like me that much. So it was a sense of living in a kind of hostile world.
You are probably familiar with the research that I've been coming upon lately in work that I'm doing about spiritual formation. Very often, spiritual formation and compassion,
Mm.
very often being a response to a void left by traumas large and small, even people moving away and not having friends and being in college, life events like that leave a void.
Yeah.
I used to, when I was active in Unitarian Universalist churches, I never understood why every greeter didn't do what I did, which was, oh, what brings you here?
Mm.
Because very often somebody coming for the first time to a religious institution is looking, obviously looking for something for a reason.
Yeah. 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 The path starts with suffering.
Hmm.
One of the Buddha's teachings is that faith arises on the basis of dukkha, suffering. So we've got some kind of unsatisfactoriness in our life, and what we've been doing up to that point, what the world has been offering us up to that point, our ideas of what life is about, they've all failed us. And you're kind of like forced into a kind of creative act where you've got to look outside everything that's familiar and reach out for something else. I see. I don't know if you've ever played computer games, but um, maybe
Not since the days of Pong the last one I was any good at was Space Invaders, but that was many
oh,
years
right.
ago.
Yeah, I managed to skip Space Invaders. I got into playing some of the Tomb Raider games. This is a long, long time ago. This is like 25 years ago, and you're faced with some particular problem, and you like try over and over and over again to get through this door or to jump across this chasm or something like that, and everything you do fails. But then you have this, I could do this a different way. And you try that, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But eventually, you find a way through. And I see faith in Buddhist terms as being kind of akin to that. It's making a leap to see things in a new way, or to try doing things in a new way, or just even the understanding or the belief or confidence that there is a new direction that you can head in.
I've been spending a fair amount of time, well, not a lot of time, but I check in on Reddit a few times a day, and I find a lot of opportunities to be a teacher, a guide to very new people who want to learn about Buddhism. And there's always this thing about faith and having faith and what does faith mean? And I've begun to express it, and tell me how you feel about this, that faith in Buddhism is faith in yourself as you have gotten deeper and deeper into Buddhism and incorporated it and tested it the way the Buddha asked us to test. Does it lead to benefit and happiness?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
teachings, do they lead? And finally, trusting your own decision. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really an internally focused faith. It's not faith in the Dharma that's out there or the Buddha that's out there. It's faith not exactly in the Dharma or the Buddha in me, but faith in my acceptance that I'm right and this is the right place.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense then?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit. I mean, I think it does evolve into that. I think everything you've said is absolutely right. But I think there's an earlier stage of faith where it's a bit more inchoate than that. It's not based on experience. I'll tell you something else that kind of pointed me in the direction of Buddhism as well, and it was a strange thing in a way. Just my local library must have been very important to me. It's where I first discovered those books, that bad book on Buddhism. But I also found a book on, I think maybe it was just on world religions, and I opened it up, and there was this absolutely gorgeous image of what I suspect now was a Tibetan temple with an image of, again, I suspect Amitabha, who's for anyone who doesn't know, is a Buddha figure. He looks very like the historical figure Shakyamuni Buddha. Oh, there we go. Sitting in meditation. In this particular image, he's red, which is traditionally the color of Amitabha. He's the color of the setting sun. And everything in this picture was this beautiful, warm red. And I saw that, and there was something heart-opening about it. And it's like there was something there. There was a sense of serenity about it. There was peace and there was serenity, and it was just like, oh, like this is something that I wanted. That didn't come out of experience. It didn't come out of testing any teachings. It was just this sense that there was a direction I could go in. Maybe this is something I can aim for.
Yeah, and that's another thing that people have trouble with, hey, you're non-theistic, but you're praying to
Mm.
something external, you're venerating something external. And I think that's a necessary component of being human, that
Mm-hmm.
it helps
Yeah,
to conceptualize something like the qualities of Amitabha
yeah,
as external before you bring them in.
yeah.
Merge well in Vajrayana Buddhism before you kind of merge with the Buddha-ness of Amitabha.
Yeah, people say that is how these non-historical Buddhas, these more mythic Buddhas, arose. That people would have deep meditation experiences, and they might have an experience of being loved, and in psychological terms, it's like a piece of them, some loving part of them, like breaking through. And reaching the rest of them. I don't really know how to express it, but it's definitely experienced as something coming from elsewhere. And an image might pop into a meditator's mind, this beautiful, serene, red Buddha, as if lit up with the warmth of the setting sun. And you might just like sit there and be loved, and so it starts off as an external thing. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition is always careful to point out that these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are not separate from our own minds, and so it is something that we incorporate. We start moving toward the sense of separateness between us and the source of love. That gap gets narrower until we're incorporating it more and more in our lives, I suppose. It's hard to talk about these things.
Yeah, it's very comforting to think of Green Tara with one foot on the ground, ready to rush to our aid. And a lot of, I say Tibetans, I always have trouble using that term now for Chinese occupied Tibet and knowing what's going on actually in the country, as opposed to the Tibetan community of Tibetan expats who are living elsewhere. But But those people who follow Tibetan Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism, I mean, or let me put it this way: a lot of ethnic Tibetans uh, have a very real sense of Tara and praying to Tara, and maybe know how to internalize that as well. But it helps to have the image.
Yeah. I think it's a very powerful thing to feel loved, to feel that there is a presence watching over you.
Hmm.
I think it's
Interesting.
psychologically, very beneficial, and I think a lot of Christians are quite happy because of that.
Yeah, there was one point in my life when I was working, long story, but a kind of a community where, and I was only 20 or so, working as a kind of community organizer in the North Philadelphia ghetto back in like 1966. And the young people used to take me to church with them, to a holiness church. And to see the young, I mean, it was very common for young African Americans, teenagers and young adults to just feel Jesus's presence,
Mm, yeah, yeah,
and it's very real and very comforting.
yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Triatna. How would you describe its well, how would you describe it? You are a member of the Triatna order, and you can mention a little about that and the theology, the whatever the right word is in Buddhism, the 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 approach, the Buddhist doctrine, to use another odd word, of Triatna.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to talk about what it is, I kind of need to talk about where it came from, which is it was founded by someone who was a Buddhist monk for a number of years, I think 13 years or so. A man called Sangrachta, who was English, born in London, became interested in not just interested in Buddhism. He felt he was a Buddhist, and he described himself as having religious experiences, visionary experiences, even, and he spent a lot of time studying Buddhism when he was young as well, because he was misdiagnosed as having a heart condition, and his doctor said that he had to do no exercise, spend as much time in bed as possible. So he became a prodigious reader and spent a lot of time uh, reading Buddhist texts. Got involved in the Buddhist Society, which I mentioned earlier, and then this was during the Second World War. He was conscripted into the army, drafted, as you would say here, and sent to, of all places, Sri Lanka, to work in using communication signals or whatever they call it. And he was there when the end of the Second World War was declared, and at that point he thought, well, there's no point in me being here. He hadn't officially been discharged from the army, but he decided to burn his identification papers. And so he started a vihara to become a monk, Kalimpong, and so he became doing various kinds of teaching. He a novice went to a Chan ordained as a teacher called Yogi Chen, and spent a lot of time with him and some other people as his disciples, essentially. And then he started to encounter Tibetan teachers who had fled the Chinese occupation, and he started getting initiations into various Vajrayana practices. So, he's a man who is a Theravadan bhikkhu, who has a Zen teacher, who has a number of very highly regarded Tibetan teachers. And then he's invited to come back to Britain because there was a dispute of some kind. I don't really know the details. There was a dispute between two Buddhist organizations, and he was at that point the senior most ordained English Buddhist. So he came back, and when he was there, he realized that neither of the forms of Buddhism that people were trying to introduce were going to be particularly successful. You had the Buddhist Society, which was like an interest group for people interested in Buddhism, but they weren't necessarily regarding themselves as being Buddhists. They would go and they would talk about Buddhism for, a couple of hours on a Tuesday evening or something like that, then go home to their normal lives as a stockbroker or whatever. And then you had a Buddhist Vihara that was trying to introduce Asian style monasticism, where again, if you were going to take Buddhism really seriously, you would have to become a monk, and there was no possibility of becoming a nun. And he realized that he wanted to start a new kind of Buddhist organization, which is what evolved into Triratna. I think he called it the Western Buddhist Sangha, first of all, and that name had already been taken, or an organization had a similar name, and then he changed it into the Western Buddhist Order, and the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, which was the sort of surrounding activities of the Western Buddhist Order. And his idea was that it would not necessarily be a monastic order, that people originally, he thought, well, people might want to become monks, or nuns, and live that way. And so originally he had thoughts that there would be different kinds of ordinations that people would move through, but there would be ordinations that would be, well, more lay ordinations, where people would still take the Buddhist practice very seriously. The understanding I get, and I've never been to any Asian countries, so I don't know how accurate this is, but in Sri Lanka, for example, I've heard that a lot of householder Buddhists, they're not necessarily taking their practice very seriously. They're not necessarily meditating. Again, it's more like something you do. You go to the temple and you hear the monks giving talks, and you give them dana, you give them food, or make contributions to the running of the vihara. So they see their role more in terms of providing dana. But he didn't want people to be nominally Buddhist. He wanted people to really be putting Buddhist principles into practice in their life in a very thorough way, in as thorough a way as they could. And eventually he dropped the idea of there being a monastic ordination, and that became it. And that's what being a member of the Triratna Buddhist order means, that over a period of time, people have witnessed your practice, and they have confidence in you. They have faith in you, to use that word. They have faith in your ability to continuously put Buddhist principles into practice in your life, and that whatever life throws at you, you're going to face that as best as you can through the application of Buddhist principles. And then this,
as I understand it, when you were, whatever the process is, ordained or
ordained,
it was the community that gave you the name Bodhipakṣa, and which means wings of enlightenment. So I guess that's their faith in you.
Not so much the community. There is certainly a community aspect to preparing for ordination. You are a particular center connected with a particular bunch of order members, and essentially it's about friendship. It's about getting to know other people and being supportive of them. Took me a long time, I think, to learn to trust other people. I was so used to being judged in my life. I was very fearful of revealing the struggles that I had in in life. You know, all the struggles in life, the struggles I had with myself, for example. But over a period of time, you get more comfortable and you're doing more, you know, like intimate sharing of the the difficulties that you have in your life, the darker side, the cynicism and the resentment and all this kind of stuff. You get more comfortable like sharing, yeah, I really lost my temper with that person, or I'm walking around full of resentment for this other person, or something like that. So you're revealing more and more of yourself, and people are starting to see that you're doing this. And at a certain point, they have this confidence, a degree of confidence in you, and they kind of like pass it up the line. There's an ordination team and an ordination retreat center, and they like pass it up the line saying, yeah, we think this person's, you know, ready to join us now. There's a series of retreats that you go on where you're exploring Buddhist teachings, Buddhist practice, and well, again, that's a practice of sangha. Very interesting. Sometimes the most painful thing that I did, but also the most growthful things that I did. I'll just give you one example. One of the themes that we explored was spiritual friendship. You know, what does spiritual friendship mean? How do you do it? Why is it important? And there was quite a large retreat, and we split up into smaller groups that would meet every day, where you could do more sharing. And we were asked to spend part of an evening each over a period of like 2 weeks, just sharing our experience of spiritual friendship, and to talk about its importance, and you know, maybe the challenges in our lives. And I sat there and I was thinking, oh God, I don't have anything to say. I didn't feel at that point. I didn't feel like I really had, you know, deep connections with anybody at all. And I opened my mouth and I think I said something like that, but then I completely locked up emotionally. Not in the sense of going blank or anything like that. It was like there was just so much emotion there that I couldn't speak. I could hardly get a word out. And I realized then just how grateful I was to people who had tried to support me, people who had tried to reach out out to me, people that had tried to get through this wall of reserve that I'd built up round about myself. And I'd tried to convince myself, I think, I didn't need other people and other people weren't really important to me. And they were. Oh my God. And that's what I realized at that particular moment, was just how much it meant to me that people who I think in some cases maybe didn't like me, even because I was difficult. I was a difficult person to be with. I was very critical. And maybe there was something that they liked about me, or maybe they saw some potential in me or something like that. But I think I was difficult and prickly and not easy to be with. And yet they kept reaching out to me over and over again. And I was just, I'm feeling quite moved by that now, just this enormous amount of gratitude. So, you know, we're going on these retreats and we're doing things like that. Which was just incredibly meaningful for me, a real turning point. It was not the only one like that, but there really is turning points. And also just these, you know, you're in it together with other people. It's not an easy thing to go off on these retreats, and you kind of, you're being watched. You're aware of that. And you're not being watched in an unkind sort of a way, mostly anyway. Mostly you're being watched over by people who they want the best for you. You know, they want to see you losing your hang-ups and losing your fear and learning how to connect more with other people and, you know, losing your arrogance. I had a lot of arrogance. You know, they want what's best for you, but you're aware that they are watching you, and they can be this very uncomfortable sense of being observed all the time. And should I be on my best behavior and all this kind of thing? So it's quite kind of it's a difficult thing to just like learn to relax into the whole thing.
The retreats you're talking about, they were silent for a bunch.
No,
No, they weren't silent.
no. We don't tend to do a lot of silent retreats in Triratna. We do them. I have been on retreats where we're in silence, you know, for a month or for 2 weeks or something like that. But our retreats are more aimed at facilitating spiritual friendship. And to do that, you need to communicate with other people. You need to have periods of silence with them as well, and periods of just sitting in meditation. But you want to get to know other people. You want to connect with them. You want to get inspired by them. You want them to help you, you know, even point out things that you're doing that are unhelpful, attitudes that you've got that are unhelpful. So you kind of like need all that communication.
The reason I was smiling so much while you were talking and asked about the silence is I've done a number of I had a period where I was doing pretty much every retreat that Lama Surya Das led,
Mm.
uh, which might be a couple a year, and they're about, let's say, a week long each. You have one, you get there in the afternoon, you talk at dinner, say hello to people. Next morning, when things start, you go into silence that ends just before dinner the last night. So you're in silence for that period. And you talk with each other just in the beginning and end. And in the end, there's a sharing circle, which is really when you've been in silence with people for a week and you can't help but judging other people, and and you go, oh, that's not what I thought, or or wow, that person's much, you in the closing circle. But the reason I smile so much is in one closing circle, I said that I typically spend the first 2 days of silence feeling as though I'm being judged for taking two napkins in the dinner line.
Yeah.
And then I spend the next 2 days judging other people for taking three napkins in the dinner line. So yeah, I mean, you get to watch yourself.
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of thing, I guess. You're
It's,
you're getting more actively involved in each other. I guess the difference is you're in a silent retreat. You're interacting with the teacher mostly,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
you can't help but watch yourself how
Yeah.
you act with others in silence.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on retreats like that. We do them in Triratna as well. My local Buddhist center is called Loka. It's about half an hour away from here, and it's a public Dharma center, but it's also a retreat center. And they have a week long silent retreat starting maybe next week or the week after. I've been on retreats at a retreat center in Wales called Vajraloka, the realm of the thunderbolt or diamond,
Ah,
and
but,
they focus on more intensive meditation retreats. And so I've gone and I've sat on those retreats, and you were meditating for 8 hours a day or whatever, and not talking. Maybe you might talk to someone going for a walk or something like that. So that's less strict. Like I've been to a couple of IMS retreats, Insight Meditation Society, down in Barrie in Massachusetts.
Ah, yes, Barry, the Barry Center. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. Well, there's a few things going on there, and not just that, not just the IMS. There's the forest sanctuary and things like this. But on those kind of retreats, you go out for walks, but you don't have conversations with people on walks. You can do a retreat on loving kindness, a week-long loving kindness retreat, but you're not supposed to make eye contact with anybody. So
I've been there, done that, and very strange. Yeah.
And I remember the first retreat that I was on there was a guy who I think it was a little younger than me. This was maybe 20 years ago. So I was younger then, still could regard myself as being a young man. And there's a guy who was maybe a few years younger than me sitting in front of me. So for 10 days or so, he was just like sitting directly in front of me. And at the end of the trip, we had the sharing circle, and I was able to say to him, I really appreciated having you sitting in front of me. I felt this real sort of sense of solidarity. I said I felt like you were a Dharma brother sitting in front of me, and he was quite surprised because, of course, he was sitting in front of me, so he was completely unaware.
Yeah, he didn't know you. Yeah, you were back there. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I was going to say about the ordination retreats, I never quite got there, was they were challenging, and that actually helps you form bonds with other people that are on the retreats, other people that are your peers. You're all going through it together, so you start, you open up a lot about the challenges of going through that process of being evaluated. To see whether you're ready for ordination, and it really does form lifelong bonds.
Mm. And if I remember correctly, was it 2006 you came to the United States or somewhere like that?
1998.
Oh, earlier than that, yeah.
Yeah. I came over to do a master's degree at the University of Montana, and I'd wanted to study Buddhism more academically, and I happened to bump into a professor at a conference, and he told me that he needed a teaching assistant for 2 or 3 years. So I ended up getting that position, going over, and that funded my master's degree, where I was studying Buddhism, but also studying business as well, oddly enough.
And then tell me, and then you decided to stay, or I know you're married now. Tell me a little bit, if you would, about your personal life, or whatever you're willing to share.
Yeah, sure. No, I lived in Missoula, Montana for 4 years. I really enjoyed that. Spent 3 years doing my master's degree, and then I had a year where I was allowed to stay and work, still on a student visa. And it was during that time that I decided to start Wildmind. So I'd had this idea one day. This was in early 2000. I had this idea, wouldn't it be great to teach meditation online? Because nobody was actually doing it at that time. You could go and you could find the address and the times of a meditation center and go along to a class, but no one was actually teaching meditation online. And my professor and I put in an application for a grant to experiment with doing this. I was teaching meditation at the university. It was part of the teaching assistantship that I was doing. It was a sort of practical component of the Buddhism course that you could take there, Buddhism 101. So I thought, well, it'd be interesting to just experiment to see if we could do some of that teaching partly online and keep in touch with students throughout the week and have them write online journals and things like this about their meditation practice. So we put in a grant app with the American Council of Learned Societies to explore the potential for teaching Buddhism online. And we did that one semester, and it seemed to be quite successful, having materials that were online that the students could access at any time. For example, you could have guided meditations, because people find that really useful when they're learning meditation, having somebody talking them through it. They can sit for half an hour and have someone guide them through meditation, and it's a pleasant experience for them. And then they go home and they try to do it on their own, and 5 minutes is agonizing. So like having those resources available at home was very helpful for them. Unfortunately, because this project had been funded through a grant and wasn't part of my university work, I owned the content. So I was able to take that content and put it on a website, which was wildmind.org. And I've just been doing the same ever since. So you were asking me about my things like my personal life. So I got married at that point. The woman I was dating, who was also a Buddhist, who'd asked for ordination into the Triratna Buddhist order. She wanted me to stay in the country, so she proposed to me. She said, "Why don't we get married?" So we did that. We got married in Florence, Oregon. And she didn't want to stay in Missoula. For a start, she'd gone off to her own ordination retreat, which was in Italy. And oddly enough, this was September 2001. Don't know if you remember, but there were some big events happened it's in September 2001. 9/11 happened while they were on retreat. She came out of her retreat and discovered that the airline that she'd flown over on no longer existed. A whole bunch of airlines went bust that particular time, had to find her own way back to the United States. Came back, discovered she didn't have a job as a teacher anymore. She'd been a high school teacher. And really didn't want to stay in Missoula. Her family were from over here, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. And so we moved over here so we could be closer to her family, who, her great aunts, great uncles, her grandfather were all at that point in their 80s and not going to be around much longer. We adopted a couple of children. That was really something that she wanted to do. I would have been quite happy just with a simple life. But I'm glad we did it. My children are wonderful people. We adopted 2 kids from Ethiopia. My daughter is now off at college on her first year of a 4-year nursing degree. My son is in his last year of high school. My wife decided she wanted a divorce. We went through some crises. I went through some very strong crises. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into, but it was difficult. Adopting a second child was difficult. Adopting one child brought us together. We had this little bundle of joy that we could focus on. Adopting a second child was much more difficult because we never got to see each other. I would be working or she would be working and the other one would be looking after the children. And then at night, I would put to bed my daughter, she would put to bed, I keep saying together. She would put to bed my son, who was younger, and then would be completely exhausted. I would sometimes fall asleep putting my daughter to bed and wake up at 2:00 in the morning. And then, have to find my way back to sleep again. So we just didn't see each other. We were ships passing in the night. And then I had a horrendous time. I was running Wildmind as a sort of business. It was my livelihood. And I had a tax accountant who was, doing my taxes, submitting my taxes. And for 2 years, she didn't submit my taxes and didn't tell me. I thought she'd submitted them, you know. And so I started getting these weird letters from the IRS coming through the mail saying you didn't pay your taxes in whatever year it was, and also in this year. And there was also some form, important form, that didn't get submitted the year before. And this was the problem with my tax accountant. She hadn't sent in this form. And then in an event to avoid it, she stopped sending in any further tax submissions. So I had the IRS chasing me for, we'd paid all our taxes, but we hadn't filed the paperwork. So I had the IRS chasing me for something like $35,000 in penalties, an enormous amount, unthinkable amount. And this was terrifying for my wife. It was kind of terrifying for me, but it was terrifying, especially terrifying for her. She thought we were going to lose our house and all this kind of stuff. And so she wanted to put as much distance between us as possible. So at that point, she decided she wanted a divorce. So I went through this horrible period where I had the IRS chasing after me, and I was working with other accountants to try and get them off my back, and managed to do that quite successfully. But that took years. It was years of stress and waking up in the middle of the night with my heart beating so hard. I thought I was going to die. I thought, you can't have your heart beating like this and keep living. And I had horrible nightmares. Well, then I got cancer as well. It wasn't particularly serious cancer, but I didn't have any health insurance when I was diagnosed with it, and had to wait for the next year for Obamacare and unfortunately, at that point, you could sign up even with a pre-existing condition. So there was a lot of stuff, went on that was very, very hard. That's when I learned how to practice self-compassion during all of that. It forced me to dig deep into everything I knew about spiritual practice so that I could support myself through these difficulties.
Without diverting us, there was a period, something like you're describing, in my life, and what I learned from that was living in the present moment.
Mm.
Nothing, the tax man or the bill collectors, nobody can get you in this moment.
Yeah.
This is safe right now, right here. I finally understood what Thich Nhat Hanh was talking about, that's your island of refuge. But I didn't mean to divert you. You and your wife did reconcile and got back together?
No.
Oh, no?
Divorced. And, well, I have a new partner now. We've been together for 7 or 8 years. We've adopted 3 dogs, one of whom is on my lap at the moment. This is Pippa. She is my meditation buddy, my Dhyana dog, Dharma dog. Yeah, no, you didn't. That wasn't a diversion. I mean, that was one of the important things that I learned. Just recognizing that you're safe. Because the tax stuff, it's out there. It's not happening. It's not real in a way, except when you think it is. So you're feeling like the tax people are after you. They're going to destroy you. But that's all thoughts. And if you just stop and realize, I'm safe right now, where I am right now, there is nothing wrong. You can completely forget about the whole thing. It comes back eventually, but for periods of time anyway, you can just be in the present moment and be
exactly. Fun. Yeah.
I think the most important thing I learned was when there is that fear there is always a part of you that is able to be compassionate toward it, so you can offer yourself reassurance. And this kind of connects with what we were talking about earlier. I don't know if you need to wrap up or anything, but
no.
Connects with what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about like an external source of love, like believing that Jesus loves you, or feeling the love of Amitabha or of Green Tara. I remember I was on a retreat once where I was teaching self-compassion, and I said, you need to remember that there's always someone there that can love you and offer you support and encouragement and take care of you. And someone said, are you talking about Jesus? No, no, you. You're the person that can do that. Uh, and that's where my approach to self-compassion really came from.
Before we wrap up, you know, something I've been curious about, and I never asked you before, just for listeners or watchers, we and I now see each other every morning in this little meditation group. So I've had lots of opportunities to ask, but where did the name Wild Mind come from?
Um, I did some brainstorming, and I don't know why, but it kind of came up. There is a book by Gary Snyder called Wild Mind. He, of course, was a Buddhist, and I'd come up with the name separately from that. Maybe I'd heard it and I'd subconsciously remembered it. I'd thought of other alternatives like Big Sky Mind and things like that. People kept saying, "No, that's too Montana. Montana's big sky country." And somehow Wild Mind just seemed to appear. Just it resonated. Uh, there's the idea of allowing the mind to be natural. You're not corralling the mind. You're not hemming it in. It's more a question of relaxing into something
Ah,
more spacious.
yeah. The idea for the way I express it is you're not restraining the mind. You're watching it in pure, unfiltered awareness without attaching to any of it, if
Yes,
that makes sense.
yes.
Um, so that's, yeah. So if people are interested, you can investigate Wild Mind Community. And you said you've got the book that just came out around the same time as mine, The Heart's Awakening, 108 Steps to a Life of Love. And yeah, I know you've mentioned you've got another one coming out fairly soon as well. You want to mention that one?
Yeah, the title of that is just Sit, and it's being published by Wisdom Publications. First time I published with them, and it comes out of a program that I set up to help people establish what I call a rock solid daily meditation practice. Because for a long time, I found it very difficult to meditate absolutely every day. I would keep skipping days, or I would skip several days, and I never felt good about it. It felt like it should be something that I should master. People would come along to classes I was teaching, and I would encourage them to meditate every day, and I wasn't actually doing it myself. And so I decided to tackle that at one point, and I managed to work out some principles that uh, helped me to get on the cushion every day. And I set that up as a course, encouraged other people to do it. Some of them have been meditating for many thousands of days consecutively, uh, which is, like maybe 10 years or 11 years, I think. Uh, some people have meditated every single day as a result of doing this program. So I submitted this idea to Wisdom Publications, and they were quite excited about it.
So I think we've come to the time, unless you have anything to add, Bodhi,
Good.
come to the time when, if I remember to, I dedicate any, if there is any merit that we've gained or any wisdom that we've gained or any good that we've done in this past hour, may it go to all beings, and may all of you, may everyone out there be well and happy.
Indeed. Sadhu.